When the call comes in, leadership is everything.
We analyze the data in real time,
making the tough decisions under pressure. Welcome to Stat Leadership.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 9, titled Leadership versus Management, Understanding the Difference and Mastering Both. I'm Phil Moy from St. Louis.
I'm JR Pickett from Salt Lake City.
Hey, I'm Chetan Kharod from New Braunfels, Texas.
Got it. And Chet, why don't you bring us in on about this topic and this episode?
Yeah, so we've been talking about a variety of kind of fundamental leadership concepts over the course of this season. The idea of effective communication in leadership, the importance of followers, the power of having a network. We've talked about mindful leadership, authentic leadership. We talked about influence, like what happens when you're not in a leadership position. But today we're going to talk about something that all of us are going to encounter, the idea of leadership versus management. Sometimes people don't realize there's a difference between these. And today we're going to get into it a little bit and figure out, is there a difference? And if so, what is it? Is there a specific time where you're supposed to lead versus you're supposed to manage? And can you do both? So let's do it.
Yeah, that's a thing that comes up a lot. Folks will talk about, they'll complain about their leader of an organization that they're micromanaging. And I think that's true when a leader is dipping into management. And what this is showing is really that the leader has not made clear what that strategic direction should be for the organization, or even strategic direction for their subordinates, for their middle managers. And obviously the leader sets the culture of the organization. And if the leader feels the need to step in, then there's probably a couple reasons for that. And we can probably sit here and roundtable this, like why a leader would need to feel the need to step into management. Just to manage, to micromanage, to why they would get their hands on when they maybe shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And just to back up a little bit, I think we need to define what the difference is between leadership and management, and then get back to your point, JR, is why would leadership need to dip their toe into management? I don't know if anyone want to bring up the definitions of either or talk about what it means to you.
Yeah, I think it's worth at least grappling with it. It's not necessarily just one way, but for example, when I think about management, I'm thinking about organizational process, organizing tasks, managing the resources associated with it, making the goals happen, making sure that people have the room to swing to make their stuff happen, and then ultimately developing the people along the way, which kind of overlaps into leadership, where it's more like being principled and transparent so that you're inspiring the vision for the organization. You're motivating not just by giving orders, but by being a certain way, by interacting with people a certain way. And then you're probably also setting a future direction so that we all want to go there. So these are some of the ways in which I define it. I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think.
Yeah, with me on that, I think the leader sets the direction and the culture of the organization, what the values are of what it is that we as an organization value in our people and our work and what we do. And the manager is the one that makes it happen. And so the leader, like the manager, is the one who's getting everybody organized to hack through the jungle. And the leader is the one that crawls to the top of the tree and looks around and says, hey, wrong jungle, or we need to go that direction with it. And a lot of folks will downplay management or speak down about management. Oh, we need leaders, not managers. You need both. And you're not going to get anything done without both. And the leader is also monitors progress and in achieving those goals in that journey and where they're going, and then can provide that direction to management of, we're getting off course here, and course correct with them. Or the leader also is when things become dysfunctional, that the management is not receptive to that or is not able to intervene or correct certain things, then it is on the leader to step in and figure out how to give the manager the tools that they need. My general take as a leader is much as an officer in the military, but as a leader in any organization. My job is to set strategic direction and get you resources and give you top cover so that you can do your jobs and stay out of your way. We'll talk to him, and that's all I got.
Yeah, JR, you stole my metaphor, which is perfectly fine regarding leadership and in the jungle. I usually, in my head, I think of management as the person would be like, we're chopping this tree in front of us down because we need to get out of the forest, and it's that way. And the leader is the one who looks above the trees and says, no, we have to turn that way. So manager, we need to go that way. And so the manager's on the ground saying, no, we got to go that way. Officially, the definitions per this wonderful resource that Chet provided us from the Harvard Business School, leadership is defined as the creation of positive, non-incremental change, including the creation of a vision to guide that change, a strategy, the empowerment of people to make the vision happen despite obstacles, and the creation of a coalition of energy and momentum that can move that change forward. As opposed to management is defined as getting the confused, misguided, unmotivated, and misdirected to accomplish a common purpose on a regular, recurring basis. And I think back to your comment, JR, where you said, oh my God, we need more leaders and less managers, that kind of thing. I think a leader and a manager can do both and be both. They just have to know when they're going to put that hat on. A leader has to know, maybe I got to be a little bit of manager here and manage the team. Whereas the manager said, I've told the team, I've been managing the team, but now I got to be a little bit of a leader and say, this is where we need to go and take a step back. So I think it's a nice hybrid between the two, and having the wisdom and experience to know which hat you're going to use to put forward to your team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's easy to have the full discussion of the principles of each or the characteristics of each, but I think you're both right. In practice, you are usually not either or, you're both, even though you may have more, say, management duties in some cases or leadership duties in others. Another way I've heard it described is that leadership is about vision, inspiration, values, culture kind of things. And management is about systems, processes, resources, policies kind of things. But I think the practical part for us and for our EMS teams that we're talking to is very likely there's probably a whole lot of leadership that will be in play. And one of my teammates used to say, man, leadership is something that involves who I'm being. And management tends to involve more things that I'm doing. So it's who I'm being, what I'm doing. But I thought that was interesting too. That was a good breakdown.
I like that. I think that the management is a vital source of information for the leader to understand how things are going and what they need. And a good manager is connected with their workforce and can say to the leader, can speak truth to the power and to the leader, hey, in order to make this happen, we need this resource and we need to change this constraint or something like that. So if you got a good manager that feels free to walk in, talk to the leader that way, every leader wants to say, I've got this open door policy, but the problem, like hardly anybody uses that. And if the lowest or that bottom tier of your employee has to walk into the CEO's office to tell you what's going on, then that's a failure of management to appreciate what the conditions in the organization or things that are needed, or a failure of them to recognize the strength within that workforce. That you may be the lowest ranked person in this organization, but have really good ideas about how to do some stuff. And okay, as a leader, am I not fostering the culture that encourages that?
Yeah. And getting back to more of the ground game, but also a little philosophical as well. As a medical director of emergency department, I find myself wearing both hats because I do have a boss and he's the chief medical officer. He's very nice, very progressive, and very pro ER. So it's very easy to talk to him. But I'm oftentimes giving him insight into the ER and saying, here's what's going on, here are the issues, and this is what we're dealing with right now. So at one hand, I'm a manager because I'm managing the emergency department, the clinicians, the processes for my chief medical officer. But at the same time, I find myself being the leader, or what I'm being as the example of what it means to be a good emergency physician and showing the emergency department this is where we need to go by leading my emergency physicians, nurses, and department through what we're going through right now, which is rebuilding an ER, which is oh so fun, especially going into the COVID flu season.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, definitely not fun. Let's talk about those that, as you say, you have to wear both hats sometimes. When are the times that the leader needs to step step into the management role? And likewise, when does the manager need to step into the leadership role?
So I would argue that for most of our careers, almost regardless of what your profession is, almost all of them, you're going to be dual-hatted. It's going to be rare to be ever just at the top of the food chain surveying strategic views only. We're almost always going to have some process that we're in charge of or some people that we're in charge of. Just a quick example, when I was a squadron commander, I was part of the leadership team and management staff for the 1st Special Operations Wing because we had a boss on top. He had 4 group commanders underneath him, and underneath them were 25 squadron commanders that ran the 25 different squadrons on base. So in that case, we were definitely part of the management. And by management, whether we stayed within budget or not, whether the mission got done or not, whether people were allowed to take vacation when they were supposed to, and whether their government credit cards were paid off on time, it couldn't have been more management, task and process. And on the other hand, for my own squadron, the 200 plus airmen that I was in charge of, they did not only need me as the pay your government credit card guy, they needed me to be able to help them connect the dots. Like, why am I in here doing this job and how does it affect the special operations mission? Providing some inspiration, making sure we rooted out the kind of culture and cult of personality that existed there before I came in. If you knew certain sergeants, you were golden no matter what you did. And if they didn't like you, you were a chump and were going to get in trouble regardless. And it took me 6 months to clean that up and have a transparent culture where everybody got a fair shake. My open door policy, this was a lesson I learned. As a leader in that organization, I had an open door policy. And the 2 things I learned were, 1, almost nobody really wanted to engage that. And 2, I accidentally jumped the entire management chain that JR was talking about. And I disempowered everybody in between me and the junior most airmen, right? Because they would come and complain to me and they never got a chance to give their supervisor, their boss, their manager a chance to take a crack at solving the problem, right? So that was an eye-opener for me, that being accessible did not necessarily make me a good leader. I also needed to empower the people that I was leading to have a chance, right? So these are all kind of operational lessons you learn, but that was an eye-opener because I was definitely a leader to my squadron and honestly a de facto leader to my peers. And honestly, you can lead up sometimes, but I didn't have the rank above them. So it's throughout our career, I'm convinced that we find ourselves in both. And as long as we are, you don't even have to be clear on it. I think as long as we're thinking about which lane am I in and make sure that we drive accordingly, then you're probably going to be okay. And the other thing is most of this is recoverable. If you're a principled, transparent leader and manager following the rules that you enforce, usually it's going to work out well. Usually. You're still going to make some mistakes, I think. Probably outside your comfort zone a little bit, but it is a little either or, but it's natural for there to be overlap in my experience. Oh, and one more thing. Sorry, before we go on. JR, you're talking about micromanagement. And I couldn't stand micromanaging bosses until I was in a boss enough position that I wanted more info. So then I realized, I was thinking about it because one of my medics was like, never pegged you for a micromanager, Doc. I was like, is that what I'm doing? And he goes, yeah, it feels like a little bit because you ask a lot of questions and you're like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I'm like, okay, so, it might be a matter of perspective because I am looking for detailed information. I want granularity. I'm thinking micro information. He's perceiving it as I'm in his business. So once everybody realized I wasn't going to get in their stuff, I just wanted to learn what worked. Now we had an understanding that Doc is always going to look for micro information. He just likes to know things. That does not mean I'm up in your stuff and I'm trying to tell you how to do things. So micro information, micromanagement. Sometimes we have to teach people that while we do it.
Micro information for you to try to understand better what their job is about, and especially when you're coming at it with respect for their expertise and
Yes.
how they do the job. And hey, I want to understand better how you do this and what you do so that I can better set conditions that support you. That's, to me, that's not micromanagement. That's engaged management that
Sure.
is wanting to do the right thing, which is clear the road for those. But if you're like, hey, why are you doing this? Well, why don't you do it this way? You should do it that way. Then that's when you're stepping into the micromanaging aspect versus the micro information.
No, I think, and that's good for leaders to know, though, because we may think we're just asking, but we're being instructive or getting into the how-tos. And a lot of times they don't need the how-to. But I learned that despite my intent to be microinformation oriented, I was coming across, based on their past experience with other people, as a micromanager. So sometimes it's just a bit of, as long as we know that's coming, you can head it off at the pass, I think.
JR, you just gave me PTSD when I was growing up with my mom.
I've been told I'm a carrier.
Growing up, my mom was a micromanager. So, no, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. I'm just like, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, Mom, I'm 40 years old. I could do this.
Oh,
yeah. Right. But I don't know if it's a mom thing or an Asian mom thing, but man, it's just, it's a beautiful example of micromanaging there.
I remember a good friend of mine in residency. He was an emergency medicine intern, but he had done a complete family practice residency and practiced some and then came back to do emergency medicine. Wow. Air Force officer and super smart dude. But in the ICU, where we were a minority in the ICU, there's usually like one EM resident and then a few internal medicine. And so skill sets are a bit different, right? So he's in the middle of a central line on a patient, and it's not a crash central line. It's elective. And the attending is standing there with him, asking him questions. Okay, what are you doing right now? All right, I'm entering the vein with this. Okay, what are you doing right now? What are you doing right now? And finally, he put the 4x4s over the site and looked the attending dead in the eye and said, every time you ask me a question, it adds 10 seconds to this procedure. And so the attending's eyes got huge. And he said, I realized at that moment that there was a line and I had just crossed it. It was, really full of regret. But part of that too was that the attending, he gets new residents every month, and particularly when dealing with junior residents, he doesn't know their knowledge and expertise and capability.
Yeah.
But I think you touched on something else there, that we see this dynamic in EMS quite a bit. When a doctor or nurse asks a question of EMS when they bring a patient in, not realizing that there is an emotional subtext there, that there is some background to it, and that a well-meaning question may seem like a criticism when it is not intended that way. And I think a lot of times the physicians and nurses that don't work in EMS and don't hear that, oh yeah, they know this is helping, they're bitching me about this and they're complaining about this and so forth, and not realizing that like, that wasn't a complaint. We're just trying to understand the thought process with respect of, you knew what you were doing and saw the conditions. Why'd you do that? And so I think what you found, Chet, with your medic was that, that sort of background had primed him to see your questions as a criticism and an attempt to alter and manage him, not an attempt to understand.
Yeah. And a lot of this, and then the leadership kicks in, right? Developing the relationship, creating a space for understanding there. And then ultimately it takes time, right? It took me 6 months to reset the culture of our squadron to one where there was acceptance, there was high effort. People were getting acknowledged for their high effort, but all that stuff takes time. And a lot of times we feel tremendous pressure as leaders to deliver the result on day one. And that's incredibly hard to do. And sometimes our higher ups expect that. Moy, I called you in here to fix this ED. The hell are you doing? And it's like, I just got here. I literally haven't even had a chance.
I said, give me 20 years.
affect change, or at least 20 days. Yeah. But you're right. Hey, JR, the other thing you said a little while ago that was super cool is I think sometimes we, in discussion, sometimes elevate leadership to this pedestal and then we downplay management. But, there are skills involved. People don't necessarily have a management personality type, but people may have a leadership personality, right? So in both cases, skills are involved. But man, to run an organization successfully, to develop people and empower them, you really need both. So I agree with you when you said that. It's not that one is better than the other. Now, I had one boss who retired as a 4-star, and he was an incredibly effective leader, at least at all the levels I saw him. And he had a great insight, though. He said, look, management problems can be addressed by effective leadership or effective management, but leadership problems can only be fixed by effective leadership. What do you think about that? I thought that was a really interesting comment.
I'm thinking.
Touch on something here. When a leader is faced with a manager that is not performing to the leader's expectations, so like the organization is not performing to the leader's expectations, and that pinch point is management. I think we certainly are seeing this in like the federal government level right now, where the answer is, "Oh, get rid of that manager and put somebody else in there that knows it," rather than like understanding like, okay, maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe this person is toxic, but maybe it is that they have conflicting priorities. They have conflicting instructions. They have multiple bosses. They don't have the resources to do stuff. They don't have the bandwidth to do certain things. There are other influential factors that maybe the leader is not as in tune with. Maybe there's an organized workforce that is pushing back on certain things, or maybe the manager is simply overtasked and needs the space to do that. And I think that before we boot the manager and just say, here, let me lead you, you're doing your job wrong, it's, all right, let me understand, because this is where I envisioned you to be. This is what I envisioned you to be doing, and you're not doing it. Help me understand it. Oh, okay, cool. I know what I can do to clear your plate of this thing, or I know I can run interference for you on this other problem that is impeding you.
Yeah. I think back to both JR and you, Chet, what you said is management can be errors in management can be taken care of by leadership and or management. And it was a very just culture comment you made, JR Pickett, where understanding where the manager is coming from. And then further back in our conversation, JR, you said, as a leader, it's my job to go to the manager and be like, this is where we want to go. What do you need? What can I give you to help us succeed to that goal? And the leadership solution to the managerial issue is adjust that. Am I giving you enough stuff? What else do you need? Am I hindering you by giving you 5 different leaders, giving you 5 different goals? Or is it a managerial thing where it's just like, this process or the way we're going to cut this tree down, it doesn't seem to be working well. Have we thought about this way or this other managerial process that the managers, I did not see that. That was something that just totally was a blind spot to me. And the leadership issues that you brought up, Chet, I would say, part of leadership is, as you said, inspiring people and leading people. The leadership is more about the people, and managerial is more about, as you said, processes and whatnot. That takes a certain amount of emotional intelligence and charisma, as you said, Chet, in our past podcast, that not everyone has the insight or the experience of wisdom at that point in their training or their career that can give that to the leader.
I think you nailed it. And I think part of what happens is we expect that your technical expertise is going to automatically endow you for managerial and leadership expertise. And it's silly that we keep doing this system-wide, but there's a reason why we do it too, right? We, early in people's career, all we have is your performance. So if you suck at starting IVs, we're going to assume that you're probably going to suck at other things too. Or if you're the greatest IV sticker in the world, we're going to assume by halo effect that you're going to be good at other things. And that's not a great example. There's better ones. Say you're really good at the bedside and you interact with patients really well, that medic is already going to be thought of as a capable medic, whether they've shown any good medical capabilities or not yet. But if they're completely unengaged or are unable to interface with the patient, we're going to spot that immediately and go, this medic's not as good. It's not as good a medic. The future jobs they get may be related to their performance at that level. But when you're a chief or a battalion chief level person, now you're being looked at not just for your bedside ability or IV capabilities, you're being looked at for your previous performance and future potential both. So we can build it in there. We throw people in leadership positions based on technical expertise, expecting them to do this other skill set well, even though we may never have defined it, showed it to them, let them practice it, and then get a couple of reps in before they do it.
I think that's so important, Chet. Yeah. And it just reminds me, I was thinking about, I have an emergency physician, super competent. He's like a warrior in the ER. He sees tons of patients. He's a relentless work machine, but he's blunt as a nail. He's blunt as a, whatever you got it, the blunt of a nail, right? And he lacks that kind of warmth. And so his halo effect is not really a halo effect, but a devil horn effect, because awesome in the ER, but his warmth is just terrible. And it reminds me of that, as we're all movie kind of buffs and nerds, the movie The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise and Ken Watanabe. Ken Watanabe is the leader of the samurais, and he's got this one like subgeneral. The actor is in Shogun. I forget his name in that show, but that character, he's a badass warrior, man. Like he's probably a better fighter than the general Ken Watanabe's character, but he was not warm at all. He's just blunt and he's just very stickler and everything. And to become a leader, you need a combination of competence and warmth, if you will,
True.
to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with that too. Even the leadership thing, right? One of the other things I learned, the Air Force had this weird system where the first time you meet with your boss, they're like, hey, Captain Kharod, we scheduled you for feedback. And I was like, I literally just signed into this assignment 2 days ago. What possible feedback could I get? And what they meant was it was actually a setting of expectations, right? That's what they were supposed to do. And that's what they did in the meeting, but it was called a feedback session. So sometimes the terminology goofs things up, but when you take over as a leader, it's a great idea to grab the managers, and like the military has a lot of good examples out there. So one of the first things you do the day you take command of a unit, you get to stand in front of everybody in your unit and have your first look at them, and they get their first look at you. And usually commanders will do some trite kind of things. Like they'll say, all standing policies and orders remain in effect until further notice. It's like blah, blah, blah. But that's your chance to capture people, and they know the rules still apply. You didn't just take over the thing and say, as of now, the Constitution is no longer in effect. Obviously not. So you don't need to say that obvious stuff. You can instead say, hey, I'm looking forward to working with each of you and getting to know you as we do the best we can to serve our country. Boom, whatever. But something. And then later when you meet with people, you get a chance to talk to them and at an individual level, set your expectations. Not everybody knows to do that. So then when you call somebody in and say, you didn't do your job, they're like, nobody ever told me. So these are simple things to fix by knowing some leadership tools, setting expectations, knowing what you stand for. We had a great general named AJ Stewart, and he used to tell us, he said, hey man, do you think of yourself as a leader? And all of us are lieutenant colonel squadron commanders in the room. So we're like, not only do I, the Air Force thinks so too, sir. And he's really, that's great. What are 3 things you believe in? And then so he kind of was going around the room, and this was one of those moments where I was switched on big time. So he came around the room and he goes, hey, Lieutenant Colonel Kharod, we haven't met before. I'm AJ Stewart. I'm like, yes, sir. We all heard you speak this morning. Appreciate your comments. He's like, yeah, I want to hear your comments. Stand up. And there's 100 squadron commanders in the room, right? He goes, just stand up and tell me, you got 3 minutes to tell us what's important to you. Go. So thankfully, for whatever reason, instead of making a mess in my uniform, I was like, there are 3 things that I think it's important to walk through life with. And they're the 3 T's. I think one of the most important things is thankfulness. If we walk around with the spirit of gratitude and are thankful, the world looks different and the world looks at us differently. The next is understanding tenacity for the truth. As a leader, you're supposed to hang tough on the truth and do whatever it takes to make that happen. And the third is time. It is our most precious resource. We will not waste it, and none of us knows how much of it we have in life. Thankfulness, truth, time. Thank you very much. I sit down and he looks at me and he goes, all right, have you been here before? That kind of thing. But
I do not want to be the person to answer after you.
Way too.
Right? So the reason for this, though, is we as leaders want to spend some time thinking about what do I stand for? What do I believe in? And it doesn't have to be deep thoughts. It can be just a little bit of scotch and a little bit of thinking. But the idea of that, of sending our mind there, figuring out maybe what we stand for a little bit, is just going to position us. There's no productivity metric for this. Nobody's going to look at a press Ganey for an ER doc. No medic is going to get overtime for thinking about this stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, these are the things that kind of separate us as we evolve as leaders. So just some thoughts. It's good to have a stump speech or something you believe in, something motivating, something that gives people a window into what JR is about, that kind of thing.
What are you about, JR? No, I'm kidding.
I'm
not going after Chet.
That backboards cause cancer. I believe that the only use for salt water in trauma is tears.
Excellent.
I find that on an individual level when I'm teaching residents, because of course we had our brand new intern class start pretty recently. And so working with each of these interns for the first time, they're moving from the medical student to the resident role. And most of the time are a bit gun shy. So they are looking for what I want or what I think they should order or anything like that. And so it's an early quick setting of expectations. Like, hey, look, you are a physician licensed to practice medicine and surgery, like it's training license, but it's still a license from competent authority to do that which would otherwise be illegal. And so you see the patient, examine them fully, have a differential, and have an idea of what you want to order and how you want to work it up. And then we'll work through that. We'll talk about pluses and minuses, things we can rule out or should be thinking of, and that sort of thing. But that early kind of setting of that expectation does help. But I also take issue with these companies that make these ridiculous mission statements or what's our value statement and all that. It's okay, it looks great on a wall, but there's nothing I can do with that. And we talked about that on a previous episode. We believe in setting conditions for success. And it's like, Jesus, what do I do with that? So at the same time, I thought we had a mission statement or goal statement with one of the units that I deployed with. And it had some good stuff of, hey, credibility equals freedom of maneuver. And we expect you to take initiative, and if it is legal, moral, and ethical, then you have our full go forward and row hard, row well, row together. And a lot of stuff about, oh, okay, this is stuff that I can action, that I feel. Right. And so many mission statements and goal statements from organizations don't have that.
Yeah, it makes them inaccessible, and people don't really want to roll in on that. They can't because it's too far away. And a lot of leaders, a lot of people in leadership positions there. I remember having to go to these offsites. We're going to use this day in this offsite location to come up with a vision and mission statement for our unit. And I'm like, okay, there's professional people that know how to do this. We should all have an idea of the fact that we were going to do this before we got here. So that's another one of my super obvious but super secret tips for leaders is, if you're going to have a meeting, set the agenda in advance so people can think and do the things they need to do before they show up. Otherwise, you've got 10 people in the room for an hour. 1.2 work days went into that one meeting in terms of person hours. And now you still accomplished nothing because you're all going to nod at each other and go, yeah, I read that just now. I need to do that. Bro, you could have sent that yesterday or a week ahead. We could have had the meeting before the meeting and shown up here and really used our time well. So some of these are just like operational skills that we fail to teach people. And then the other is we come up watching well-intentioned but inept leaders, or well-intentioned and inept managers, or managers who feel that part of their job is putting you in your place, not lifting up the organization and getting the job done. And we either replicate that or we have a reaction against it, and we are caught in the amoeba-like behavior of moving away from a noxious stimuli. And the problem with that is moving away from things is never a good motivation. You're just escaping. You're far better off finding an actual goal and moving toward it. So yeah, now when we train people, a lot of times I put them in a position where I'm like, I sent you an agenda. Why did I send you an agenda? And they're like, Doc, I don't know. I'm like, because I wanted you to think about it before, because you're much more powerful when you had a chance to think about it than if I catch you cold on it. But sometimes we have to show our trainees or the people we're leading, and then tell them what we wanted them to get out of it, because otherwise they may not get it out of that.
You got to do your homework before you come to class, and same thing before you come to that meeting to make it useful. I want to talk too about when it's time for the manager to be a leader. I think all of us are leaders and managers because we all answer to somebody. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You still have people to answer to. You answer to the voters. Eventually, it's just on a different timeline than a lot of us that answer directly to a boss. But you still answer to someone. But I think as managers, the times that we have to be leaders, I think when you have a large distributed organization, that it is difficult for the individual leader of that organization at the top of that to reach down through every level of the organization to the thousands of people perhaps that work there to get their full idea across. And that's where the manager comes in. The manager understands what the goal is, understands we're doing this thing. This is the direction that we're heading, and the manager understands their own role in it and their own section's role in it and how they do that. Then they can convey that to the folks that they are managing and leading. This is what the boss says she wants for the organization, and this is where our part is and why we're doing it this way to help support that. But you can't touch everybody in the organization. So those managers that are interposed between the leader and that bottom tier of worker still can manage to carry the message of the leader of the organization, and not just regurgitate it, but to explain it, to understand it. So when questions come up from those employees, they're like, this seems like this might be counterproductive to what you're talking about. And then that manager who's closer to what that employee is doing, but understands the leader's intent, can say, no, here's why it will work, or here's why we think that this is going to contribute to that mission. And if we do it, it also makes the manager's job a lot easier when they do that. You can only force people to do so much, but we've talked about this before, influence versus authority, and really authority doesn't get you very far. Influence gets you a long way. If they understand what you're doing, they understand what you want to do, and they're rolling it, then they'll be incredibly productive and great for your organization to do what you want them to execute. If they're just being pointed in a direction and shut up, don't ask questions, just do the one thing that's in front of you, then they're going to meet the minimum standard, which is barely above inadequate.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I agree that what you said, JR, is completely true. And I think that's the key point for leadership is inspire and influence your people to say, oh, I want to do this because this is good for the team and everything, as opposed to being authoritarian and be like, oh, I'm just going to do it just because he says it, which in our jobs, we have a combination of both, unfortunately.
And the manager also stepping into the leadership role, understanding the leader's intent, knows when to deviate from process. That we have this process, it's set up, but under this condition, this process is not going to be correct, and that they can take the initiative and lead to change this thing. And the outcome ends up being where the leader wanted it to be. But it requires leadership of self and section and the others, and initiative. And an initiative is a leadership quality. It is not a management quality. Fight me on that.
No, it's not wrong. I think, and that's where the overlap is, right? When you find managers, because the managers are applying or affecting processes in line with policy to achieve their objectives, there's not a lot of room there for creativity necessarily or initiative, though there can be. But the leader, by definition, is in that follow me this way kind of mode. And there may or may not be anybody out in front of them or a policy pulling them along to create their process. So initiative does land more squarely, at least in most cases, I think, in that side of the Venn diagram.
Indeed. What do you think?
It's funny. I got this NCO that I work with, and Dave and I were friends well before he was working in my unit. And this is a really good example of leadership and management and where to step in with various aspects of this. Because he's a ranger, and he shows incredible amounts of initiative and can lead others in that. There are 4 Daves. 2 of them are allowed. 2 of them are not. So you have attentive Dave. Attentive Dave is the Dave that appears most often when dealing with his family, his wife and his children. He's a wonderful husband and father. But also attentive Dave that when like mentoring a younger soldier or something like that. Attentive Dave, right? There is good idea Dave. He is extremely creative with stuff. And sometimes that creativity flows unhindered from his brain to his hands and feet. But he does come up with some really creative solutions to stuff. There is ADHD Dave, who, often influenced by good idea Dave, starts things and then here's this way and then this way, and then whatever project it was is now expanded to well beyond the initial intent. And then there's Ranger Dave is unstoppable. Now, Ranger Dave is the one that, like, if you need something done, hell or high water, Ranger Dave is the one that gets it done. However, when Ranger Dave shows up with good idea Dave and a touch of ADHD Dave, then the results may end up being ultimately counterproductive. And so you have to, as the leader, set left and right limits. They're distant limits because I'm going to tell you like what visualized end state is, or what we've been told visualized end state should be, and this is where we need to be. And I'm going to be out of your way and hopefully giving you the things that you need to do it. However, I need you to solve this problem non-destructively, and I need you to. If you're going to do that, these are the things you really can't do in solving this problem, because it's not going to be the Staff Sergeant Dave that goes to Leavenworth. It's going to be Lieutenant Colonel Pickett that goes to Leavenworth for whatever happens for this. That's leadership and management. I know him well enough to lead set end state, but to also manage a little bit to say, we need you to stay within these boundaries.
Yeah. And that kind of gets us back to how we opened it, which was in many ways, leadership is talking about the what and emphasizing the why. And then the managers are talking about the who's and the how's to try and to get us there. And if you can marshal those 4 Daves by doing that, then that's awesome.
You got to know there's certain Daves you must immediately reject. You must eject them from wherever the project is, and others you can harness their powers for good.
That's right. Being forced for good.
Use that to further your ends.
Got it. Do you think we should sum up this one and then head to our? I don't even know what we're going to do. As our little shtick at the end.
Anybody read any good books lately?
I am listening to the Q's one. I think one of you recommended that book, Q's.
Oh, Q's, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't.
Vanessa Van something. I forget her name now.
And then I'm reading a book called Switch. I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Shift. Managing Your
Yeah.
Emotions. Yeah. Was that recommended by one of you guys too?
I may have seen that either on my list or one of JR's. JR has a public list that I pulled off of Facebook one time. I don't know if he actually read them all, but man, it was a good list.
I have read them all.
Sure, read them all.
So, like, you're like, oh, very clever. Eat any good books lately?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I may have listened to them.
Hey, I don't care how you consumed them. I like that list. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And one of you has previously mentioned Call Sign Chaos by General Jim Mattis. I've read that once before. I recently read it again. I'll foot stomp that. It is not only is the general such a good storyteller, it is an incredible leadership manual. I highly recommend.
What's it called?
It's called Call Sign Chaos.
Call Sign Chaos.
And telling his story, he works through his career as individual, tactical, and then higher levels of operational and strategic leadership. It's really interesting. The first time I read it, I just read it as, hey, this is a leader I admire. The second time I looked through it, it was more like, I think I get what he was doing, the framework behind the story. And that was just really cool.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, another quick one I'll recommend is I've been on a fiction kick lately, and we've talked about this before. There's some people that are nonfiction types only, but I'm highly involved in, I usually have one fiction and one nonfiction going at a time. And the reason I do that is not because I don't have enough to think about, but I feel like fiction often interjects, like it disengages our mind from task and allows for a creative space or a space where you're resting or withdrawn from the things that tax you and tire you out, and you have a space to be where maybe you can just take a little bit of a break. If you've never read, for example, the Michael Connelly Bosch series, highly recommend those. The TV show is great too. They did a great job adapting, and the author was involved as the executive producer, so it stays mostly true to the story. But the books themselves are really quite remarkable. The beauty of reading them now is he's been writing them. There's several dozen of them. So if you just start at the beginning and follow Bosch's career, he actually evolves as a person, as an officer, like a police officer, and progresses in his life. And he doesn't always win. Sometimes you get to experience his ups and downs, and it's really hard to watch or read sometimes as he goes through it, because you're like, dang it, that didn't need to happen. But his personality took him there, and he let himself go there. But so Michael Connelly's Bosch series, I highly recommend.
Got it. Yeah. So that book, Shift, How to Manage Your Emotions, what I was reading, it's interesting. It's because it's like using your emotions as signposts to guide you through life's challenges or life in general, and not have it control you, which as a human being, we all know emotions very well. And so it's an insightful book, because I try to, just the way I grew up and what I've experienced in my life as a typical guy, I try to push my emotions way down and forget they ever happened and release them in an inopportune time. No, it's very insightful in that regard, and how you can use it as signposts. And the example they start off in the book with is this Navy SEAL going through one of the, not Hell Week, but just he's locked in a box for training for, 3 days. I don't know, something like that. But it talks about how he used his emotions innately to help him guide through and get through the adversity of that specific training for Navy SEALs and everything. And then I kind of piggyback that off of the Q's book that was recommended by, I think, you, Chet, where they define charisma as warmth and competence. And it's just using your emotions for warmth and competence and everything. And how do you portray that it's a very insightful read. And I really enjoy it. And so thank you for that recommendation. And just what's going on in my life right now is my kids I don't know about you, Chet, but maybe you, JR, know about this, but there's this little movie out there on Netflix called K-Pop Demon Hunters.
I've seen it come up in my recommendations because my teenage daughter has ruined my search history on Netflix.
So I would recommend watching it. It's entertaining.
All right.
And once you watch it, you'll want to download the soundtrack and you'll listen to it nonstop. There's a reason why it's number one on the pop boards right now.
Cool.
I'd say my book is Kitchen Confidential from Anthony Bourdain. And I think that it's fascinating, for one thing. And I love his narration style and how he describes the start of his career in cooking and just the characters that you come into. But from a leadership perspective, it's a really good book, because these restaurants are the cast of characters that you have there are barely under any kind of control. And so he talks about a lot of the leadership principles and dealing with a very tough bunch of people that do their job and do it well, and some the interpersonal stuff that comes up in it. And also his great love of food comes through as well. But I really enjoyed that book, and not only from personal perspective, but also the leadership perspective.
Awesome.
All right, cool. That sums up, I think, this episode here. Anybody have any last words or anything else before I end this episode?
No, this is great.
Oh, I do. The actor we were
Of course you do, JR.
The actor we were talking about from The Last Samurai is Hiroyuki Sanada.
Better you said that than I.